All right, today we're tackling a topic where understanding can, quite literally, change a life: autism. Now, awareness has grown so much, which is great, but so has this cloud of misinformation, and it's creating a ton of stress and confusion for parents and for families. So let's just clear the air, okay? Let's get straight to the facts and let's dive right in with this because this quote from Dr. Mohammed Schwab, he's a pediatric neurologist, it just sets the stakes perfectly. This isn't just about winning an argument on the internet. These myths have real-world consequences. They can literally stand in the way of a child getting the support they need right when they need it the most. So before we start busting all the specific myths, we have to tackle the biggest misunderstanding of all. I mean, what are we even talking about when we say the word autism? Okay, this is probably the most important distinction we can make. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder. All that means is that the brain is wired differently. It processes information and experiences the world in a different way. And the key thing to get here is that it is not a disease. It's not something to be cured or gotten rid of. It's a fundamental part of who a person is. Right. Let's move on to our first big category of myths, and these are the ones about what causes autism. This is where you find some of the most harmful and, frankly, stubborn falsehoods out there. This one is it's a particularly painful myth. It's this really old, cruel idea that comes from these long debunked theories from decades ago. And it unfairly pointed the finger at parents, especially mothers. So let's be crystal clear on this. Science has absolutely slammed the door shut on this myth. Autism has zero to do with how someone was raised. We know it's a complex condition. It's got deep genetic and biological roots. So for any parent out there who has ever been made to feel guilty about this, you are not to blame, period. And here we go. This is probably the single most famous and maybe the most dangerous myth of them all. It's a claim that's been spread so far and wide that it has actually led parents to make health decisions that put their own kids at risk of really serious preventable diseases. The verdict on this one could not be more final. In the global scientific and medical communities, there is no debate. None. We're talking study after study, millions of children, decades of research. They all show there is absolutely no link. Vaccines are one of the most important tools we have for public health, and they do not cause autism. Okay, so we've covered causes. Now let's shift our focus to the person. There are just so many stereotypes out there about what it's actually like to be autistic, about their inner world and their behavior. This is such a common and honestly dehumanizing idea. This stereotype of the autistic person as being somehow robotic, unable to feel love or joy or sadness like everybody else. But the truth is, it's so much more nuanced. This isn't about a lack of feeling. It's about a difference in expression. In fact, autistic individuals can feel emotions with an incredible intensity. The disconnect just happens when the rest of us expect those feelings to look a certain way. The feelings are absolutely there, we just have to learn to recognize them. Yeah, we've all seen this one in movies, right? The lone genius or the isolated person who just avoids people. And that leads to this huge assumption that autistic people are just antisocial and would rather be left alone. So here's the thing. Desire and ability are two totally different things. An autistic person might deeply, deeply want to connect and build friendships, but all the unwritten rules of social interaction, it can feel like trying to understand a foreign language they were never taught. They don't need judgment for seeming distant. They often need support and understanding to help them bridge that gap. Now, this is a really frightening stereotype for a lot of people. The idea that aggression is just a core part of being autistic, that it's something to be expected or even feared. This right here is such a critical reframe. Aggression is not a personality trait of autism. It's communication. It's what can happen when a person is completely overwhelmed or in pain or so frustrated they can't take it anymore and they just don't have another way to get that across. Our job isn't to punish that behavior. It's to try and understand what it's trying to tell us. So you see, when you start to look past all these myths, a much more complex and much more human picture starts to form. We see people who feel things deeply, who want connection, and whose behaviors are really just a form of communication, if we're willing to listen. All right, let's turn to our last section here, myths about the future. What actually happens after a diagnosis is made? What does the future really hold? When you're searching for hope, it can be really easy to get drawn in by promises of a quick fix or some kind of magic cure. And this myth, it preys on that hope, and it pushes these unproven and sometimes even dangerous therapies. So again, the facts are very clear. There's no cure for autism because it's not a disease. Now, sure, some specific diets might help with other related issues like digestive problems, but they don't treat the autism itself. The gold standard, the thing that's proven again and again to help, is early, intensive, evidence-based support. Things like behavioral and educational therapies. This one might sound kind of obvious, but it has a massive impact on how people think. When we believe we've met one person with autism, we can wrongly assume that we now understand everyone with autism. The truth is baked right into the name: autism spectrum disorder. A spectrum, by definition, means a huge range of experiences. Every single person is a completely unique mix of symptoms, incredible strengths, and very specific challenges. It's why there's a saying in the community that goes, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So after all this myth-busting, what's the big takeaway? Well, it all comes down to the power of shifting our whole perspective, moving away from fear and moving toward understanding. And this brings us to what might be the most important message of all. A diagnosis, it is not a life sentence. It's not an ending. It's a key. It's the beginning of a new journey. It's the moment you can stop guessing and start truly understanding, and that's what lets you provide the right kind of support for someone to really, truly thrive. And that, of course, brings us to you. Now that you're armed with the facts, you have the power to challenge this stuff when you see it. You can help replace that fear with facts and replace stigma with support. So the real question is, how are you going to use this understanding to help change the conversation? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.